Yeah, recording. Thank you for joining us, everyone. My name is Jasper with Score Maine. I'm joined by Thomas Van Dzura. I hope that we got that right.
You did.
Uh,
Perfect. Nailed it.
Great.
Thank you.
Today, to talk about demystifying SBA loans, a rich, complicated topic, and we're here to help with that. If you're not familiar with us here at SCORE, we're a resource partner of the Small Business Administration, and we help clients from all stages of the business cycle, from pre-start to exit. And I do want to thank Atlantic Federal Credit Union for helping make today's event possible. We do look forward to your questions as they arise. When you have one, feel free to throw it in the chat, and we'll address it when the time is right. And if you're interested in introducing yourself and a little bit about your business, that'd be great to throw in the chat as well. We are recording today. If you miss anything, have to leave early or joined us late, that'll be sent out once available. And otherwise, Thomas, why don't you take it away?
Thank you so much, Jess, for the introduction. And thank you, everyone, for taking the time out of your busy day. I know it's a busy time of year as well, and we're just shifting from September to October. As I prepared and conferred with my friends and colleagues at SCORE Maine, Dan Reed and Jasper and Nancy, as the description on the website aptly described, I was trying to craft what I believe I crafted was indeed a presentation on SBA loans for those who are new to it, or it's indeed a beginner level, beginner friendly topic or presentation of the topic on SBA loans. Some of you may have heard about it, may not have heard about it, you might be faintly familiar, you might find the topic a little intimidating, but what I believe I put together for you here for your benefit is a view of the forest from the treetops when it comes to SBA loans. And so with that, what I have by way of our sort of informal agenda, and feel free to, as Jasper said, post questions in the chat. I welcome them during, or we can do them after. I'm totally flexible. We'll do some introductions. I'll tell you about myself a little bit before we get into the topic at hand and the details. We'll talk about, why might a small business seek an SBA loan? Why are you taking the time to attend this presentation? Why might funding or financing through an SBA loan be something you're thinking about? I'll tell you more about the SBA itself. How does it work? The various types of loans that are available. And at the end, I've got some resources or references, a couple links, particularly to the SBA website itself, which got a wealth of very valuable information. And my job was to sort of vet that. You could probably spend a course or two or session on two just on the information that's out of that website. My job is to vet that and condense it down to indeed what is a beginner-friendly, beginner-level course. But there's amazing material out there, and we'll talk about some of it in the presentation available to use to leverage. And I think it's fantastic, and that's provided at the end. A little bit about myself. As a Seinfeld fan, I won't bore you with all the gory details and the yada, yada, yada. I'll just hit some high points. I had done not too long ago an online webinar on accounting ethics, and rather than reinvent the wheel, I chose to use the same bio. But I started with Atlantic Federal Credit Union back in January 2024 and have thoroughly enjoyed every day of it. We're Maine's largest credit union, one of the leading credit unions with over $1 billion in assets. A little more than 49,000 members. And in addition to our video banking services available to our members, we have 11 branches, the newest of which was our Scarborough branch that opened back in the spring of this year. One of the many reasons I jump at an opportunity to do something like I'm doing today and facilitate is that I have a passion for teaching. And before I came to Atlantic, I was teaching at the business department at St. Michael's College for just about 7 years. You see the courses that are listed there. Certainly one of my favorites was personal financial planning, but I also had some exposure to teaching corporate finance, corporate or business financial planning. So I do have some, academic and indirect experience and exposure and knowledge base of the SBA and its loans. I'm not, by professional training and background, a lender, and don't have the same amazing expertise that my colleagues and friends who do that for a living here, but enough to be able to present this course and steer you in the right directions if I don't have the answer myself. My academic background and training is in accounting and finance, and I've got several certifications through the Institute of Management Accountants, of which I'm an active member. And my wife, Brenda, and I live in Yarmouth. We met at St. Mike's. We were both in the same graduating class, but we did not meet until our senior year. My reason for that is I was an accounting major and my grades were priority. I wanted to make that most important. Her explanation would be is I was the best second choice from St. Mike she ever married. So there's a big debate on who's correct in that. We have 3 sons. 2 of them live here in Maine with us. One's in Atlanta, Georgia. We have a granddaughter and actually a granddaughter on the way. My same son who has, my granddaughter will be a big sister, and that should be happening in sometime in the next couple of weeks. So we are on standby for a flight to Atlanta, Georgia for that. And as you see here in bold, above all, we embrace each day as a gift and seek love and laughter at the same time. And that's why I love what I do here every day. And I'll try to incorporate some levity in spots during the presentation where I can. For example, this original picture had a New York Mets logo on it, but after their historical collapse and the mess over the weekend, I photoshopped it off because I did not want to offend anybody. So I took that off. As Jasper said, we decided, given the audience here and those who were participating in a nice sized group, you can introduce yourself in the chat, as Jasper said, and that'll work best for that. So the first order of business, and as we go back on what I was hoping to address and accomplish in the session, why might you be thinking about seeking an SBA loan? Why are you taking the time to listen today, and why may you ultimately talk with an SBA-approved lender partner about getting funding for your business? Well, there's several possibilities. This list is not meant to be all-inclusive. You could be looking for working capital. The accounting definition of working capital is current assets or minus current liabilities. That's a fancy way of saying, what's your funding, and is it sufficient for your near-term current immediate needs for expenses like salaries, rent, utilities, supplies, things of that nature. You could be looking for funding for inventory if you're making a physical product or providing a physical product. It could be for equipment. It could be for construction. You could be looking for commercial real estate offices or spots. It could be for an acquisition or expanding your business, and certainly other viable possibilities. But this is sort of what you see here in front of you is some of the more common pathways and needs from a financing standpoint in pursuing an SBA loan. A little bit more about the SBA itself. So the SBA establishes loan guidelines, and what that does, and through their partnership with lenders, it creates a win-win situation for both the creditor and the debtor, in that it reduces the lender's risk for small businesses and loaning to small businesses. So that makes it more attractive to the lender, and for the creditor or for the borrower, that it by extension makes you a more attractive, more appealing opportunity for borrowing from that lender. So it really does create a win-win. The SBA-backed loans, we'll talk about that in a few moments. One of the other benefits is that, especially for small businesses that don't have the time and resources that large businesses, global businesses, multinational Fortune 5 companies might have, Fortune 500 companies, SBA-backed loans simplify the process. So simplicity is a huge asset when it comes to time and resources for small businesses, when it comes to this very process of seeking and applying for and securing funding through the SBA. And as we'll also talk about in a few moments, the SBA partners with lenders to enhance or expand or really increase exponentially the access to funding for small businesses. As we'll see shortly, across the 50 states in the USA, there are over 800 lender partners that work with the SBA. So that opens up a plethora of pathways and opportunities that might not be otherwise available to small businesses if the SBA was unavailable. And it's really about that trio, that troika. It's the SBA, it's the lender, and it's all of you as a small business. That's that important collaboration between those 3 parties: the SBA, the lender, and the small business. In terms of what might the benefits of borrowing to the SBA be, or what might make it worth your while if you're looking for the SBA as your pathway to securing funding and what you need for your small business. Well, first and foremost, the SBA guarantees or backs the loan, more often than not in part, sometimes in whole. They charge the lender a fee for that the lender pays to the SBA. That's usually passed on to the borrower. It's an upfront one-time fee. But in the event that the borrower is unable to pay because of that fee that the lender pays to the SBA will step in and pay at least a portion of that loan. And so that's a key part of mitigating that risk for the lender that the SBA plays. The SBA, as I said, reduces that risk because of that guarantee and also allows easier access to funding. We'll see that theme repeat itself several times throughout the presentation about the easy access or the more numerous access. The simplification is a key benefit to anything when we talk about SBA loans. Easier than might otherwise be if the SBA didn't exist. You'll see competitive terms if you compare it to your conventional or non-SBA loan opportunities. With some of the loans, there's some opportunities for counseling and education. You typically see lower down payments involved with SBA loans. There tend to be more flexible overhead requirements. So what do we mean by overhead? From a small business perspective, those are typically your indirect costs. So they may, for example, not necessarily be costs related to if you're manufacturing and making a product. They're not those costs that are directly associated with that product and putting it together. They're costs like utilities, rent, maybe advertising expense, what you would normally think as overhead and not direct product or service costs. There tends to be more flexibility in that and securing a loan to pay those type of expenses than you might see in other options or pathways. Likewise, in certain loans, there may not be any collateral needed. We'll see a case or two where there is, but in some loans, the need for collateral is not present, which can be a benefit to the borrower. Jasper, any questions so far? So far, so good?
We don't have any questions, but if there are, please feel free to put them in the chat. We do have a few people introducing themselves.
Great.
We have Christy Hemingway from Runamuck Need in West Gardner. Andy Chevenel, who's looking to purchase Dayton Trailer and is working in Atlantic for
Yes.
the process.
Yes.
Sam, who is founder and chief engineer with Vista Engineering, an AI engineering firm and technology staffing firm. And lastly, Peter, who is in the early stages of opening a cat cafe in Massachusetts.
Oh, love that. That's awesome. That's great. Thank you, everybody, for sharing and taking the time to be here. That's
Yeah,
great
great
stuff.
variety.
Yes, great. Very inspiring. Next is, if I'm interested and I see the benefits of borrowing through the SBA, what's required? What makes me eligible to borrow through the SBA? And we'll see some of these themes repeat themselves. Right now, we're talking about eligibility for borrowing through the SBA in general at a macro level. When we get into the conversation about specific types of SBA loans, we'll see some of these very same things when we talk about eligibility at the micro level, i.e. for those specific loans. And again, I'm giving you sort of a view of the forest from the treetops. And so that at the end of the day, we'll see a slide in a not too distant future here where if I've done my job and this has benefited you, that's my aim here, that when it comes time to hop off the treetop, dive into the weeds and get on the ground, and you have those conversations with SBA approved lenders or potential lenders, you feel prepared and informed enough to have meaningful and coherent conversations. And I have at least gotten you to that point. And so I feel good about that if that's how you feel when the seminar is over. But in terms of general eligibility thoughts, the small business needs to exist as a for-profit business, so it cannot be a non-for-profit, enterprise. It must be located and conduct its business within the United States. It needs to be a good credit risk for the lender or credit worthy. Typically, you're going to the SBA because other non-SBA conventional type financing options aren't really available to you as a small business. And depending on which lender you end up working with, as I said, there are 800 or so that participate across all 50 states. That particular lender will provide the full list of specific requirements and really get into the minutia, depending on what type of specific loan and which lender you end up working with. So the lender and the requirements will vary by type of loan and by lender, obviously, as well. So a little bit more about eligibility. As I just mentioned, lenders and loan programs all have their unique requirements, but to the best of my ability, as I went through the information and gathered it, refreshed my memory, got reacquainted, drew upon my own direct experience, notwithstanding that caveat about that uniqueness that exists across loans and lenders. Generally, eligibility is based on what a business does to receive its income, how you earn your revenue, the character of its ownership, the locations where the business operates and conducts its business. You must meet certain SBA size standards. Now, on that particular question, I could probably spend a whole 60-minute presentation on that and do so joyfully. But there is, if you were to click on and I encourage you to browse it at your leisure and check out the SBA website. If you search for the size standards, you'll come to there's a 42-page document on the various size requirements, and it's based on the North American Industry Classification System Codes, which some of you may be familiar with, the NAICS industry codes. That 42 pages has all kinds of different industry sectors specifically noted and described, and there may be anywhere from 3 to 5 such sectors on a given page, but it's either going to be based on the size standards, either going to be based on millions of dollars or the number of employees. So financial or non-financial, millions of dollars or in number of employees. And if necessary, if it's be helpful, I can provide that document or that link after today's seminar when Jasper sends out the follow-up correspondence. So size standards are certainly important. You certainly have to manifest the capability to pay back the loan to the lender. And you also, as part of your business, have to pursue a sound business purpose. So, helping sort of craft the broad brushstrokes in terms of eligibility in the context of the SBA itself. It's important to note that the SBA itself does not directly make loans or issue loans or provide funding to small business itself. Aside from a few very minor and rare exceptions, it partners with other lenders throughout the country to make those loans. And again, as we talked about at the outset, that partnering that the SBA does with these lenders, the guarantee that it provides for the fee, that really does open up a number of other windows and possibilities and pathways to financing and to secure loans that otherwise wouldn't exist for small businesses. And when that takes place, when you find that lender that's approved by the SBA and you start those conversations, you form that relationship with them, have those meaningful conversations, that lender picks up the ball from there and they will handle coordinating the application and approval of the loan, and then all the necessary pieces that goes with managing and servicing that loan after the loan's been taken out and issued. So they become your partner from that point once you work with that lender. And again, it's all about that important troika, that important trio between the SBA, the lender, and you as a small business. So again, the SBA does not make loans itself directly, but they play a very important intermediary role or agent role, connecting those 800 some odd lenders with small businesses that are looking for those funding opportunities. One thing you want to do, there is some homework I'd recommend before you start making calls or reaching out. We'll talk about how to go about identifying and finding and talking to those 800 some odd lending partners throughout the U.S. Obviously, you're going to focus in Maine, so the population's not 800 for you, but you want to have some things done and some information on hand at your disposal before you start having those conversations with prospective lenders who participate in the SBA program. One that I'm very familiar with, especially in my teaching life over the last 7 years or 8 years ago before I came to Atlantic, is talking about business plans. That's an important fundamental document that you want to have at least drafted and work with your lender to put the finishing touches on. Your typical business plan has several important sections. Just from my own experience, and here I'm drawing upon a resource that I used when I was involved in teaching courses around corporate business financing, business borrowing. That business plan typically has an executive summary, which covers topics like the company's mission and vision, a brief description of the product or service that you plan to provide, the funding you're going to be seeking. There'll be a section providing a company description, again, your mission and vision, what type of legal structure, what's your business structure, sharing any business history if it's been in existence for a bit, data about the location and the facilities associated with your small business. There'll be a section on organization and management. So, for example, items like an organizational chart, profiles of your business's management and ownership. Another key important section is market analysis, a section on your product or service. So talking about product line, for example, unique value proposition that you're hoping to offer through that product or service, any intellectual property description if that applies. There'll be another section, that business plan, for marketing and sales strategy. That's certainly important to prospective lenders to see that you've thought that out. For example, what's your sales process going to be? Are you going to be engaging in any promotional activities? Have you thought through, have you identified either existing or potential channels of distribution to get your product and service out? Especially in my wheelhouse in the finance and accounting world, there'll be a section on financial projections, certainly to include some past financial data, your projected financial statements. Typically, the big three there are your income statement, balance sheet, and statement of cash flows. The big three, those basic financial statements. That's something that I've talked to my friend Dan Reed at Score Main about, maybe down the road. That could be the topic for another presentation that I do, is those financial statements, that financial data, which is a very important component of that business plan, to get a little more information about what those are, how you put those together, and how does that fit in all this. But they definitely want to see those financial projections and financial information. And the other section is going to be a little bit more detailed, diving into the weeds a bit about the exact funding request. For example, what's the precise loan amount you're looking to fund or seek? How are you going to use those funds? And equally, if not more important, how do you plan to repay the loan that you've taken out back to the lender? Okay. So that business plan is a big one. And that one too, I could probably spend a half hour, if not an hour, on facilitating a presentation on the finer points of that business plan. But that's an important deliverable. You also want to have on hand information about the amount and use of funding sought. That's part of the business plan. Credit history, and if your business isn't quite yet off the ground, you haven't started, you'll want to talk to your lender about, look, my business isn't set up yet, but what are you looking for there in lieu of that when it comes to credit history? We talked about financial projections specifically in the context of the financial statements. Collateral may be applicable, so you want to have a sense of what might be available, what you could make available, what you might be able to pledge for your business by way of collateral when it comes to that relationship and securing a loan with the lender. And talk a bit about, have knowledgeable conversations about your industry experience. So those are sort of the homework assignments of the agenda that you want to make sure you've got complete and checked off before you make that first phone call or send that first email, and start those in-depth conversations with the lenders after you've gotten through today's session.
Hey, Tom, we did have I feel like a pertinent question here. Andy Shevnell finished his business plan recently. He said it ended up being 57 pages in the main body and another 50 for the appendices. I was told it may be too long for a bank to accept. Is that true?
It could potentially be. My personal experience has been, that too much information is not necessarily a bad thing. I think they'd like to see thoroughness as opposed to a business plan that's too light, if that makes sense. When you have that conversation with the lender or prospective lenders, I'd be upfront about that and say, at least give them a chance to take a look at it. Say, look, I've got a business plan together. It's 50 some odd pages. They'll come back and tell you if it's too long and you condense it. But I think that's that's not a bad problem to have. I think that's better than having something that's too light and isn't sufficient. And hopefully that feedback's helpful.
Yeah, it sounds good to be planned out. And just a quick plug, business plans are kind of our bread and butter here at
Yep.
SCORE. So if you're not already working with a mentor, it's a great time if you're looking for help with your business plan to sign up for one.
And I also go back to one of the points I had earlier on, is that the requirements may vary by lender and loan type as well too. So it's hard to, it's not hard, but I don't want to come up with a single cookie cutter response to that. But that having a thorough business plan and maybe having too much is better than not having enough.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions at this point, or okay to go ahead?
Oh, we do actually have one from Tina, and wondering how the SBA is different from the FAME program. That might be a bit of a long-winded topic. We could save that for a little bit later, but if you have a quick blurb about it.
Yeah, I could probably I can do a little research and clear some comments on that. But I am familiar with the other program. Um, I think this is sort of the U.S. government's what's the word I'm looking for? Keystone Watermark Watershed program for small businesses, and highly prevalent in terms of what they have available and the work they do with other lenders. But I can certainly shed some more light on that and flesh out the leaves on that, and certainly give you some more information on that question and response for you to share with others when we're done.
Yeah, great.
That's a good one. That's a good point. That's a good question. We okay to move on? Any others?
Yeah, I'd say so, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Jasper. I appreciate your help. And rest assured, it's not like you have to jump into a dark room and find a light switch and say, okay, where are all these SBA lenders at? There's a very handy, helpful, user-friendly tool on the SBA website to seek. It's called the Lender Match, not surprisingly, and that can help you find a local lending partner. Towards the end of the presentation, on one of the last pages, I provided you with the link to the district SBA offices in Maine. So that might be your very logical starting point, whether an email or phone call. But they do have a tool. It's a click of a button on the SBA website where you can look at and try to find a local, as I mentioned, more than 800 lenders within all 50 states. Use that tool to parse through those lenders and find one that's near you, that you could find yourself potentially working with in terms of convenience, reputation. You may be familiar with some of the name, but you're not left to your own devices to find those lenders. That matching tool is very helpful. I've tried it myself and very user friendly, and that's something to certainly leverage when you're trying to identify who I want to talk to and who those lenders are, those partners, because again, they're the ones that are actually making the loans backed by the SBA. When you do get in contact with some of the things or topics or questions you want to talk to them about is interest rates, minimum credit score, cash flow requirements. Are there any prepayment penalties if you decide you want to pay the loan early? If business conditions or the economy becomes challenging, are there any grace periods available? If we need to get into cash management, postpone some payments. Is there any possibility that full repayment could be demanded, and if when that might take place? And again, you'll find out when you execute that tool and leverage it, you'll find out what lenders do in fact participate in the SBA program as its all important valuable partners, part of that trio, part of that troika that we were talking about before. I can share, for example, that here at Atlantic Federal Credit Union, we are indeed Maine's #1 credit union SBA lender and top 5 out of all financial institutions in the state of Maine. So we're certainly one among many that believe and support and greatly value the advantages and the benefits the SBA have to our small business friends and partners. And small businesses are the backbone of the economy, and these lenders play a pivotal role in that. So I encourage you to use that tool. And also, as I said, I think there's three or four district offices in Maine, one in Portland, I think one's in Augusta or Bangor, and I'm drawing a blank on the other one. But you can start there as well and find out right away in our region, hey, can you put me in touch? I'm thinking about an SBA loan. Can you connect me with these lenders that participate in this specific area? So there's certainly no shortage in terms of in disadvantages or challenges to finding a lending partner. And if nothing else, as I said at the beginning of the outset, hopefully I've prepared you and gotten to this point where with that high level view of the forest and the treetops, when it's time to climb down off that tree and get on the ground and dive into the weeds, you feel like you're informed enough and you've gotten enough out of today to start having those conversations and say, okay, thanks to this, I'm able to have this conversation and make that phone call or get together in person or meet virtually and talk about these important topics like describing your needs. What is it that you need? What are you looking for from the vantage point of your business? You'll get matched with a list of interested potential lenders. Certainly engage with those potential lenders, proactively engage now that you feel prepared. Again, compare rates, fees. You don't encounter those usual fees in the borrowing world. Closing fees. I mentioned the fee that the SBA charges up front to guarantee the loan. There may be title fees, other legal fees. Again, depending on the lender and type of loan, fees will be involved. And that lender, that partner, that important part of the trio will help you apply for the loan. But hopefully, if I've done my job for unselfish purposes for your benefit, when you get to the slide here, when you get to this point here, you feel like, thanks to this, I feel a little less intimidated, a little more knowledgeable that when I have this call or I have this visit, I feel prepared. I can have a meaningful dialogue and pass the baton from here. But that doesn't mean my facilitation and what I'm trying to do here stops. We certainly are moving forward. What are some of the common types of SBA loans that are available to you as small business owners or soon to be small business owners? This list isn't meant to be completely all-inclusive, but these are some of the big ones, the more common ones. These are the 7A loans, the 504 loans. There's the third type called microloans. And again, not to be discouraged if for some reason, if fate has it where specific SBA type loans aren't available to you, these lending partners will certainly have conventional or non-SBA loans that might emerge as a more viable option. So all's not lost if you go through the conversations and it comes to the conclusion that neither of those three above may be a good fit. These lenders will have other conventional, traditional non-SBA loan options that you might find works better for you as a small business as an option. So that, again, it varies by lender or loan, but there's a silver lining in that cloud if it doesn't happen to work out. But those are your types of SBA loans, and we'll dive into each of the three. Any questions or things I can pause at before we talk about each of these loans?
Not right now, but
Oh,
if anyone has any, again, feel free to queue them up in the chat.
great. Let's talk a little bit about the first one. The 7A loan, that might be the one that's most well known. That's certainly the SBA's primary business loan program. It provides loan guarantees to those lenders for a fee. That's what the SBA does. That's that backing that mitigates that lending risk to the lender and makes the small business a more appealing potential client and borrower. These loans are capped at a maximum of $5 million. And it typically supplies funding for small businesses with specific requirements. Okay, so the first of the big three from the SBA loans is indeed the 7A loan. I was talking about a moment ago that you had those sort of general macro level eligibility requirements for the SBA as an overall entity. Now we're getting into those eligibility requirements within specific loan types. So from the macro to the micro, as I talked about before and gave you that little teaser trailer before we got to the movie. So what are some of the eligibility requirements for you as a small business to be able to think about pursuing a 7A loan? You have to be operating a business. You have to operate for profit, so not a nonprofit. So you see some of these themes start to repeat themselves from what we talked about earlier. Be located in the United States. We talked about before in the macro conversation the SBA size requirements and that document that's got all the various sectors identified depending on what your sector is and the relative NAICS industry codes and whether it's based on millions of dollars or numbers of employees, but you want to be sure that you fall under those thresholds, you meet those requirements. I won't go into all the details here because I want to keep this new business, new SBA friendly, beginner friendly, but they do mention in the background that there are certain types of businesses that are not eligible for 7A loans. You want to be sure that you're not tied or linked to one of those ineligible businesses. We talked about this one, the micro level, at the macro level, excuse me, that you're pursuing the SBA because your other conventional borrowing opportunities aren't necessarily available to you as a small business. Here they're talking specifically, I can't get credit on reasonable terms from non-federal, non-state, or non-local governmental sources. In other words, the conventional, or for lack of a better word, traditional options aren't really something that's reasonably going to meet my needs, and therefore that's why I'm having this conversation looking into SBA loans. And to no surprise, and here's a repeat eligibility requirement here too, you need to be credit worthy and demonstrate a reasonable ability to repay that loan back to the lender. Okay, so eligibility requirements at the micro level and specifically associated with those 7A loans. Next, if I am indeed eligible, what uses can I put that 7A loan to? How can it be applied? How can I apply that funding? It can be used to acquire, refinance, or improve real estate and buildings, if that's germane, if you have those. It can be used for both short and longer term working capital. The helpful hint there, when you see short, you're thinking a year or less. Anytime you see long term, that's typically more than a year and farther out. You may be thinking about refinancing any current borrowing or debt that you have as a business. It could be used for the purchase and installation of machinery and equipment, including one of the latest trends, AI-related expenses, artificial intelligence. You could use it to purchase furniture, fixtures, and other related supplies for your business. I'm not sure how often, at least at this stage for this group, this would be apropos or applicable. It could be used for changes of ownership and ownership structure, either complete or partial. And it could be a loan where you've got a mix of some or all of the above, a multi-purpose loan. Maybe have a recipe where it's the ingredients are a couple of these different avenues or applications that you see here for 7A loans. When it comes to repayment, again, I go back to that, not caveat, but that qualifier that it can vary depending on the specific lender and the loan, but the loan repayments, those terms, how that unfolds, how it's undertaken, will be determined by several factors. But again, generally speaking, notwithstanding that uniqueness that we talked about earlier, most 7A term loans are repaid with monthly payments of both principal and interest from the cash flow of the business. And so that's where those, especially that financial section of your business plan, when you talk about the minute you see cash flows, that's why that particular component is a big one. The balance sheet, the income statement, the statement of cash flows, the financial projections. That's going to be a critical piece to this particular part of the repayment, how that repayment is going to be mapped out and how that's going to end up working. You could have either a fixed rate or variable rate loan. Payments stay the same for your fixed rate loans because that interest rate is constant. Conversely, or alternatively, you could have a variable rate loan where the lender may require a different payment amount when the interest rate changes. We know already that a couple of weeks ago, the Federal Reserve changed the discount rate. There's a fair number of cohort in the economy that expect maybe one or two more rate adjustments downward before the year is out. Some think not. Some think they might be more aggressive. Only time will tell. But nonetheless, you do have an option or a potential choice or potential repayment scheme where it's either based on a fixed rate or a variable rate when it comes to the repayment of the 7A loan. The second of the big three is a 504 loan that's available through the SBA. And again, in all these three cases, the SBA is working and setting you up with the lending partners. So that trio, that troika still applies. When you think about 504 loans, this is really where you're trying to secure long-term fixed rate financing for major long-term fixed assets. So think sort of the analogy there is capital-related long-term projects, long-term assets around business growth and job creation. So this one's a little different from the first one in that these are available through what the SBA calls certified development companies, or what you sometimes may hear as CDCs. These are community-based nonprofit partners that work very closely with the SBA. Just like they do with their regular lenders, the SBA regulates and manages in terms of the interaction, engagement, certifies, I should say, these CDC partners. And these CDC partners are in it, and they have skin in the game because they want to help these small businesses. They're just as focused on economic development within their communities as they are the success of your business. And as I said, they are certified and regulated by the SBA. And so they're just sort of a subset of those lenders, those partners that we talked about a few minutes ago. Another difference here is that the cap's a little higher. These loans are capped at $5.5 million, whereas the 701 loans we were just talking about, the cap was $5 million even. Okay, so the 504 loans. Here too, we'll talk about eligibility, and likewise, you'll see some repeats that we talked about at the macro level, and again at the micro level at the previous loan type. But again, you need to operate as a for-profit company in the United States or its possessions. The business should have a tangible net worth of less than $20 million. So there's a little bit of a different, an additional piece in terms of size here. Have an average net income of less than $6.5 million after you deduct or account for federal income taxes for the 2 preceding years, typically fiscal years of your application. And again, those individual lending partners will help you dive into the specifics and confirm and discern those specifics. We talked about earlier fall within the general SBA size guidelines, that 42-page document, the NAIC system codes, and depending on which sector you fall in amongst the plethora of sectors, and whether it's based on dollars or the number of employees. I can't underscore enough, and as Jasper said, this is one area where SCORE Maine excels with the business plan. You see it here again. You got to have a feasible business plan. and have that together as part of the package to be able to share with that lender. I wouldn't suggest going forward and beginning the conversations unless you have at least a draft or you have a pretty good idea of what that business plan is going to look like and you've got something together. They're going to be looking for that right up front, and that's a key component of the eligibility requirements because of that. And you need to maintain good character and demonstrate and manifest the ability to repay that loan. Those are eligibility requirements for the third of the big three and the 504 loans. Just like with the 701 loans, so what are the, how can I use these proceeds if I'm able and fortunate enough to secure a 504 loan? How can those funds be applied? You can spend them on existing buildings or land. You can use the loan funds for new facilities. You can spend it on long-term fixed machinery and equipment with the useful remaining life of a minimum of 10 years. This also can include AI-related, keeping up with today's trends and what's happening, that dynamic game changer technological capability. It could be AI equipment, or it could be, if you're a manufacturing entity assembling and making a product, it could be the machinery and equipment that you need to, in fact, manufacture your product. I won't get a whole lot of the details, but it can also be used to engage in some level of subject to requirements and limitations, consolidating or repaying or finance other debt. There's a wealth of information out there and details that's probably beyond the scope of this course, but you can investigate that at your own leisure. But you can certainly use it towards, again, consolidating or refinance or structuring debt that you may have. It has to be qualified debt as a small business. And you can also use it for the improvement or modernization of items such as land, streets, utilities, parking lots, and landscaping. And you can also use it for existing facilities. It doesn't have to be new facilities. But those are what you commonly see as uses of those funds when it comes to a 504 loan. On the flip side of that coin, there's certain things that can't be applied, or certain endeavors or pathways that cannot be used if you're fortunate enough to secure a 504 loan. So those specifically are, for example, you can't use the 504 loan proceeds to spend on working capital or inventory if you have a physical good or product that you sell. Again, working capital being that funding for your day-to-day, near-term, immediate expenses like salaries, like payroll, like rent, like utilities, like taxes, all those obligations that are typically due a year or less, your day-to-day operating activities. You cannot use it for consolidating, repaying, or financing debt that does not meet the definition of qualified debt that we saw on the last slide. Here too, on this one, I'll let you investigate that on your own. I thought that was beyond our conversation today, but that can't be used for that if it doesn't meet what the SBA considers qualified debt, as we saw on the list of what you can use it for. You certainly can't use it for either speculation or investment in rental real estate. That's a no-no. That's something you can't use those 504 loans for. That's not an appropriate means or pathway to use those funds. And you can't use it for the financing of AI-related working capital, intellectual property, or consulting services, soft costs. So there's things that you can't spend it on when it comes to the 504 loan. I'll pause here. We have one more to go, but any questions on the first two or anything I can address here?
Yeah, again, if anyone has any questions about the 504 program or questions coming up, throw them in the chat. Nothing
Great.
right now, but I can butt in as they come up.
Great. Thank you so much. Here too, it's, the SBA is working with partners, lending partners, and specifically, it's a little more unique. You can drill down, peel back the layer of the onion one more level, and these 504 loans are available solely through, as we saw earlier on in this particular loan type, those CDCs, those certified development companies, those nonprofit entities within communities that are looking for this very type of opportunity to promote economic development and raising up small businesses. So they work very closely with the SBA. They are uniquely qualified. Not every lending partner is, but these folks, these CDCs, are in fact uniquely qualified in 504 loan programs and related regulations. As we talked about a few moments ago, they're absolutely certified and regulated by the SBA, so they have to operate within the SBA's parameters and continue to maintain that certification and remain in compliance. If not, they'll be withdrawn from the program. And they really do help small businesses. They'll help you assess what your options are and navigate through all that information and craft a project and a financing that really will fit your business. They're a strategic business partner as much as they are a potential lender when it comes to the 504 loans. And just like there's a tool on the SBA website for locating the general lending partners, they also have a tool available when you investigate and look into this loan type. There's a very similar tool that you can use to find, okay, what are the CDC entities near us here in Maine? Who are they? Where can I find them? And how do I get in touch? Another very user-friendly tool to parse through all that information and say, okay, this is what I'm looking for. Help me find someone near me that might be a good fit. And so a similar tool that's available at your disposal that I would encourage you to leverage.
Yeah, Tom, do you happen to have the link handy for that tool? Otherwise, I can use it or send it to everyone in the follow-up message.
I don't have it embedded in the slide, but when I can send that to you. And if I think of it before out, I'll try to drop it in the chat. If not, I will include it so you have it in your email that you send
Yeah,
out.
that'd be awesome. And then
Yep.
we do have Patrick with a great question.
Yep.
Why would a lender steer a SB to the 504 versus a 7A? Percentage of guarantee, less paperwork, or not enough collateral?
It could be some combination of those, any of those above. I know the focus here is on the community development piece, and again, the 504 loans tend to be for longer term financing when it comes to major fixed assets. Whereas the 701 loan, you could use it for working capital, you could use it for inventory. The focus here on the 501 loan is more of a longer term perspective, longer term out in terms of what it is that we're financing. The cap is a little higher; it's 5.5 million here as opposed to 5 million for the other, and some of it's also in the. I was just about to get to the repayment options might be a better fit under the 504 as opposed to the 701. For example, with the 504 loan repayment, they can be done. The repayment term can be anywhere from 10 to 20 and 25-year maturity terms are available. The interest rate tends to be pegged to an increment above the current market rate for 10-year U.S. Treasury issues. If my memory serves me correctly, last time I looked, it was just under 4.2%. On average, at least on experience, that the interest total is approximately 3% of the loan, and the rate may be or could be financed with the loan in that it's part of the loan payment, which frees up much needed and what could be useful working capital for the business. So the 504 loan is the emphasis there is on those long-term sort of capital projects, major fixed assets, if you will. Whereas if we go back to the loan, the 7A loan, forgive me, you can use it for short-term and long-term working capital. You can use it for debt. You can use it for changes of ownership. But it may be a better fit for some of the reasons that we just talked about for the 504. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I guess while we're on the topic too, Patrick also asks, could a small business use a combo of a 504 and a 7A to meet their loan needs?
I don't think that's an impossibility. That's something you can talk with the SBA lending partners. It could be that they might recommend, okay, this portion of the funding that you're seeking, that might be a separate application that you're using maybe for working capital or for inventory and supplies, and then this other piece that you're looking to do for this long-term capital asset, that might be something where a 504 loan may be more appropriate, and they can certainly guide you through that possibility. I haven't heard of that not being a potential option, but I can confirm that as well and provide that for you with the email out to the folks afterwards.
Yeah,
Happy to do that.
yeah, it's all in the chat for right now, but feel free to keep them rolling in, everyone.
Okay. The third of the big three in terms of loan types is what they call a microloan. Much smaller in scale. This loans provides up to 50,000, where before we were talking about 5 and 5.5 million. This is more of the funding that might be available to get things started and get off the ground, as opposed to talking about long-term fixed capital assets or projects, really to help small businesses start up and or expand. Likewise, they are available through similar SBA designated lenders, those partners, that part of the trio or the troika. These lenders make all credit decisions, and they'll help you kind of establish, discern, and set all the terms for your business's microloan. The difference here on this one, as compared to the first two that we looked at, on average, again, generally speaking, with that qualifier, that it could vary. There are unique features depending on loan and lender, but nonetheless, on average, some form of collateral and or personal guarantee of the business owner is required on these microloans. So this is the first time you're really seeing a specific reference to collateral. But again, fall back on that. It's going to be unique depending on lender and loan, and therefore that reason, the individual requirements will tend to vary. Oops. What are likewise, as we talked about with the other two loans, how can I spend those funds if I'm able to secure that loan? You can spend it on working capital. Again, those funds, money that's used for your immediate, near-term, current obligation expenses like salaries, utilities, advertising, rent. You can spend it on inventory. You could spend it on supplies, so your current assets, those first three, or you could spend it on longer term, intermediate term, or longer term assets, furniture, fixtures, machinery, and equipment. You can use those. All those are very valid microloan uses. When it comes to the repayment, certain factors will determine how that shakes out as well, from the amount to the planned use. Again, going back to the uniqueness, it might depend on the lender's requirement, the specific lender, and the needs of the small business owner, all of you. There is a maximum repayment term that's allowed. And so, in other words, it can't go out any more than 7 years, the repayment term on the SBA loan. Again, that qualifier comes into play here. The interest rates, that's going to vary depending on the intermediary lender, that lending partner that you choose to use. But on average, at least as of today, that interest rate generally falls between 8 and 13% on these microloans that are capped at $50,000. So not quite as extensive in magnitude and scope and dollar value, but still could be just as useful if you're just getting started. And that might prove to be the more appropriate fit and pathway for you, depending on your circumstances and where you're at. I mentioned at the outset that some great references and resources here. I want to give a shout out to the SBA. Their website is phenomenal. There is a ton of information there that may take you several days to go through, but it's more than worth the time and effort. What I tried to do for today's purposes is kind of glean through that, condense it, vet it, and put it in the context that makes it useful for that SBA Loans 101 or that beginner level, beginner friendly presentation. But there's lots of valuable information out there. I also included the link that'll be embedded in the PowerPoint presentation that Jasper will send out to the diving in specifically to the district offices of the U.S. Small Business Administration that are located here in Maine. I believe there are 3. And the other thing I will add to the question a few moments ago, I'll give you the links to both tools, the tool to find the lender match tool to find the general lender partners. And I also will add the link to the tool to find those CDC partners. So I think you'll find both of those very helpful references to leverage and use to your benefit after today's session is over. Jasper, I didn't know if you wanted to take it from here, either this slide going forward or
Yeah.
any questions that may have come into the chat, whatever suits your pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. We really appreciate you talking today on this topic, Thomas. It's very in depth. There's a lot of caveats to it, and I'm sure that the guidance today has helped everyone who's attended. We did have one question that's pretty, I guess, timely from Christy. I'm wondering, will the SBA program continue to function through/during or in spite of a government shutdown, and specifically the acceptance of new loan applications?
Yeah, my hope is that that's certainly very timely on the forefront of everyone's mind, and a realistic possibility. Hopefully that's avoided. I can't see, just from my experience and academic and just familiarity, I can't never say never. I'd be surprised if that were to happen. But there too, that's the best thing to do there is when you reach out to that lender, if that's something you're doing like right away, just say, hey, I have a legitimate concern here. What does the district office in Maine here think about it? Personally, I'd be surprised, but that's not that's just my personal answer. I can't, I think it's too important to have that happen. I think personally that will avoid that shutdown, but I could be wrong, and we
Mm.
may have that unfortunate consequence. But I think that's a question I would, see what the folks in Maine at the district office, see if they know what they're planning on, and they may already have a plan B in mind if they think that's going to happen.
Absolutely. We work pretty as a resource partner of the SBA. We work closely with them, and the team over there is, very hardworking, and I'm sure they'd have some answers if you need anything. We did have a question earlier that I feel did get kind of addressed by the slide, but I wanted to maybe expand on it. Peter was wondering if nonprofits are not eligible for this, and I believe you said no in the slide, but why is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there is a cohort out there in the business world that has been lobbying the SBA or the government to thinking about opening that up to nonprofit entities that because they certainly play, especially in terms of economic development and civic purposes, a very important role. It's quite possible that conversations will happen and potentially down the road that can change. To this point, the focus has been on for-profit enterprises, but the number of nonprofits responding to the needs that continue to grow in society at large are rising, and the balance of the roles and the needs that they meet compared to their for-profit counterparts are rising with it. So I think that's there's a growing call out there to look at this, and I spent the better part of my professional career in the nonprofit sector. It's near and dear to my heart, and my hope is that someday this does become a realistic part of it, and we'll see what happens. And there's a lot more partnering going on with for-profit and nonprofit enterprises as well. And I think as those increase, I think you'll find that strengthens that's call. That's my just personal professional look on it.
Mm. We had one more from Peter. As far as timeline purposes, how long does the SBA loan application and approval process take from start to finish usually?
Yeah, it again there too. It depends on the lender and specific type of loan. I think you're looking at anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months, depending on again which of the three types we talked about, what the lending requirements are, what stage you're at with your business plan. You definitely want to start by making sure that before you have those conversations, you've taken care of the homework assignments that I mentioned way back here in the beginning. This right here, the business plan, but that varies as well. Again, depending on if you're working with a CDC, if you're working with a regular lender, is it a microloan, which might be faster? Is it a 7A loan, or is it a 504 loan? But from my experience, from what I know, it could be several weeks to several months. But again, though, if with the SBA involved and having that guarantee and that backing, that works and that creates an advantageous relationship for both the lender and the borrower, and you might find that it goes faster. But that's certainly one of the questions you want to ask when you get to this point here and you talk about finding the lender. Ask about interest rates, minimum credit scores. Ask about the application process. What's the timeline? I would add that to the slide here, and I'll do that before I send it to you.
Great. We had a one from Sam here. Is there a specific industry, i.e., cybersecurity, IoT, et cetera, that the SBA might give more preference to than other industries?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of off the top of my head. I did start doing a little research on that, especially after I had found the NAIC classification codes and looking through the list. And you certainly see AI in this presentation referenced several times throughout the eligibility, or the not the eligibility, but the acceptable use requirements. So I'll do some more research on that one too, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's going to start to be the case or might be the case. But
Mm.
you certainly see it specifically referenced in the codes where you probably didn't see that obviously 2 or 3 years ago. I know there's it's a priority for our current government, and we'll see where that goes. But that's a great question and one I'll add to the list to follow up on.
Yeah, great. Well, we are running down on time here. Does anyone else have any other questions? In the meantime, I'll close this out. I do want to thank everyone for attending. I want to thank Thomas for a great presentation and Atlantic Federal Credit Union for helping make today's event possible. As we mentioned before, we will be sending out a copy of these slides as well as some pertinent links and a copy to the recording of today's presentation that you can view at your leisure if you missed anything or just want to revisit it. On this message as well. It includes a survey similar to the link here that we really appreciate you filling out. We take your feedback seriously. And if you weren't familiar with us here at SCORE, SCORE offers free confidential one-on-one mentoring, whether you're starting or growing your business. It's easy to request a mentor by visiting score.org and filling out a short online form. Just your zip code right on the front page and a bit of information about your business and what you're looking for help with. We're a nonprofit partner of the SBA with chapters all across the country, including right here across the entire state of Maine. And here in Maine last year, we helped start 560 businesses right here in the great state of Maine. Um, we hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope to see you again at another workshop coming up soon. I want to thank everyone
Thank you,
one more
everybody, for your
time for
time and
attending,
attention.
and
Appreciate it.
thanks again, Thomas.
Thank you.